the SABC's funding matter is a burning platform which, if left unresolved, poses an urgent existential crisis to the public broadcaster. Now, these are the words of the Chairperson of the Parliament Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies, Khusela Diko. Now, this comes after the public broadcaster's leadership briefed the committee yesterday on various matters, including its performance and the 5-year turnaround plan. The broadcaster said that the current liquidity state of the SABC is high risk, with a 1 billion rand Sentech debt and other debts that it cannot service when they are due. So to talk to us more about the situation, we joined virtually now by Chairperson of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies, Khusela Diko. Ms. Diko, thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you, Sakina. Thank you so much for having me, and good morning to all your viewers.
So let's just jump straight in. How concerning is the public broadcaster's financial state when it comes to things like delivering on its public mandate and also investing in digital capabilities, seeing that that's where the broadcasting space is moving to?
Yeah, maybe let me just start off by saying that, Sakina, we consider the SABC as a national asset, a strategic national asset. It is a very important state-owned company that cannot and will not be allowed to fail. Now, yesterday, the Portfolio Committee had called the leadership of the SABC, led by Minister Malatsi, to come and brief us. Firstly, in terms of the implementation of the turnaround strategy that the SABC had adopted, we wanted also to get insight into the progress that is being made in the dispute resolution process with Sentech. As you indicated at the beginning, there is that 1 billion debt, but also the SABC is struggling under, I suppose, what they call the high signal distribution tariffs that Sentech charges them. And then finally, we also wanted to have a look at, discuss and reintroduce through the minister the SABC bill back into Parliament. Now, what came out very clearly in those discussions, that the SABC's financial situation is definitely an existential crisis for the organization. You have an SABC that is expected to firstly deliver on its public mandate. That mandate is not funded or not funded sufficiently. We have an SABC that expected to evolve and become a broadcaster of the future, using digital technologies, competing with over-the-top services, but still the funding is not enough. And you'll remember this is largely because we expected that public mandate to be financed largely through the license regime, the TV licenses. Now, it's not an exaggeration to say that that particular regime has failed. We have very high levels of non-compliance from the citizenry. We have a fiscus that's already straining, trying to fund other social services. So we said that this is an opportunity then. As the Portfolio Committee, working together with the department, we must use the opportunity of the introduction of the SABC bill to look at how we can be more innovative in funding the public broadcaster moving forward.
And just to add to all of that, the SABC, Ms. Diko, also stated that its major capex projects had to be paused due to a lack of funding, and there's currently no budget for 2026-2027 in the capex long-term plan. So, looking at the dangers that this could possibly pose, and especially labor relations also dragged into that with the aging infrastructure, what's your take after hearing that? Because the situation is clearly dire.
The situation is dire, Sakina. I mean, if you look at the capital assets of the SABC, we got a report that the last time those assets were refreshed were in 2010 for the Soccer World Cup. So you are working in the SABC with infrastructure that has reached its end of life. Without wanting to be alarmist, but you really have an SABC whose lights could go off at any minute. And that's why for us, this is an urgent matter. We have said that part of what we need to do is really to conscientize society of the problems that we are facing at the public broadcaster. For our part, as the Portfolio Committee, we have committed ourselves to engage with our counterparts in Parliament, the committees on finance, the committees on trade and industry as well as sports. You'll remember that a huge component of the money that the SABC has to spend is around sports rights as well. And what we're trying to do with the bill is to say that let's look at various measures. Yes, first prize would be for the public mandate to be fully funded from the fiscus, but we understand, I think, the challenges that the National Treasury has raised in that regard. We are also calling for possibility of an introduction of a household levy, where households with television screens in this country would be expected to contribute to the SABC, but in a manner that I think increases the compliance rates. One of the challenges of the license regime is that there's really no consequence, for not complying with the need to have TV licenses. But we're also saying other broadcasters, especially the commercial broadcasters, they benefit a lot from the public service mandate of the SABC. And perhaps we should look at a broadcast or a public information levy that could be yielded in that regard. But we're also starting conversations with the minister around the possibility of looking at how do we regulate the so-called OTT, the over-the-top services, which at this point are really not contributing in any way to our sustainability within the broadcasting sector. So those are the options that we are considering, Sakina. And maybe just to make the point that we've said that the SABC bill has to be amended or perhaps even redrafted. It's a process that we're going to undertake in consultation with the executive. But we cannot wait, up to 3 years for this issue of funding to be resolved. It is an urgent crisis, and the Portfolio Committee has committed itself to work with the Minister in this regard.
And I'm glad, Ms. Diko, to hear that Parliament has a sense of just how difficult the situation is for the SABC, given its funding challenges. Because, you speak about that CAPEX budget, and I'm glad you spoke about, the last upgrades in certain instances having taken place in 2010, because the reality is, and perhaps when you do those in loco inspections that sometimes the portfolio committees undertake, is to come and understand just how difficult it is for the newsroom, as an example, where you have systems literally breaking down. We are magicians here at SABC to make sure that there's a picture beaming every day and nobody is any wiser about the actual technical difficulties that we face, Ms. Diko. You'll be amazed if you can come and spend one day here just to see how things are actually breaking down behind the scenes. But the show goes on, we make sure that it actually goes on. But speaking of, the bill, now the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, of course, in consultation with the Minister of Finance, they are tasked with identifying this new funding model, if I understand correctly. So obviously they're required to do so within 3 years of the SABC bill coming into force. But as you say, there are some setbacks there. But as far as the Portfolio Committee is concerned, are you on board with at least some of the funding recommendations that are contained in the bill as is?
Sakina, I really must commend the work that the men and women at the SABC are doing. The situation is not easy, but we have seen significant improvements, particularly over the past financial year. There's been a lot of work that's been done, for example, to improve labor relations, I think, as you had mentioned, but also improved audit outcomes that speaks to an organization whose governance is coming back on track. And finally, we've noted the projections that even the loss that the SABC has suffered, you're looking at reducing that in the immediate term. Now, we are definitely on board as the Portfolio Committee. We have said to the Minister that any support that the Portfolio Committee is able to lend, we will do so. And it is for this reason that we are not returning the bill to the executive, because to do so means to restart the process. Instead, what we're saying is that it's a priority for this Portfolio Committee that we stabilize as the SABC is stabilizing, but then we strengthen and we move with speed. So we are going to be looking at mechanisms where we're going to broaden the public participation process. To date, inherited from the 6th Parliament, we've received about 17 submissions from stakeholders in the industry. Now we're saying let's put our heads around the table, and I think that is the approach and the orientation of this portfolio committee. The rules of the National Assembly empower the portfolio committee to amend, if necessary, redraft any bill. So we are going to be using those rules to move forward. And we're going to get suggestions from the SABC, from industry, from government, in terms of how, within the shortest possible space of time. So what I think the portfolio committee was rejecting was this 3 years to complete this process. We want things that we are able to be legislated in the shortest amount of time, but we want practical solutions, because it's not just about the SABC today and the challenges, but we need to future-proof the organization. I mean, you have seen a trend line that shows shocks to the SABC system. There's been decisions that have been taken by government, for example, the analog switch off, which would have reduced the SABC's audiences by 40%. And I don't need to explain that. That's then got a knock-on impact on revenue as well. So what we're trying to do is to say that let's sit around the table, let's find quick wins to this situation. And this doesn't mean that we're not going to be knocking on the door of Treasury through our counterparts in Parliament, being the Portfolio Committee on Finance, and raising those issues to ensure that we're able to find tangible, lasting solutions. But Sakina, we really, all of us, have to be advocates, I think, for the SABC, and a huge part of it is in the current regime, really seeking to promote greater compliance to the license regime, people paying their TV licenses. But we also need to be aware that globally, public broadcasters are funded from the fiscus, and that still remains a key imperative that we should push for.
Ms. Diko, we have a minute and a half. I quickly have to touch on the Sentech issue. That SABC Sentech bill stands at R1 billion. Now, this obviously further exacerbates our financial difficulties at the public broadcaster, and it hampers our ability to deliver on that public broadcaster mandate. So talk to us about that. Is there any hope for finding some sort of resolution to that particular issue?
Sakina, we do believe that Minister Malatsi has got this issue underhand at the moment. He is busy with a mediation process between Sentech and the SABC. And I think that part of what all of us are struggling with is that while it's important that you maintain the financial viability, sustainability of the SABC, you need to do the same with Sentech. I mean, the SABC is Sentech's largest client, and that debt of R1 billion does obviously affect Sentech's ability to continue to support the broadcasting sector, including community broadcasting and some of the other commercial broadcasters as well. So it's about finding, that perfect balance between the two. What SABC leadership has committed to is that they remain committed to settling that bill with Sentech, but then that we need to relook at the tariffs that are charged by Sentech moving forward. To date, the SABC has improved on its payment rate to Sentech. From paying 20% per month, I think a year ago or so, you now have SABC at least being able to service that debt to about 80% of the current account at the present moment. So it's work in progress. As Sentech is also, as an organization, I think, looking to diversify. They're going into a lot of infrastructure rollout, and what that is able to do is that it lessens its reliance on the SABC as its main competitor for its survival. So we will be watching that. The minister has committed to giving us regular reports on the mediation process. I think we are looking at a timeline of about 3 months or so, although he wouldn't want to commit to that until they finalize those terms of reference. But it's something that has to be dealt with, and it's really one of the crippling issues that the SABC is dealing with.
Ms. Khusela Diko, thanks so much for your time this morning. Ms. Khusela Diko is the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee in Parliament on Communications and Digital Technologies, and giving us an update after the SABC leadership briefed the committee on its progress in implementing its performance and turnaround strategy.